The air in the throne room of Xyrath was thick and still, as if even the molecules waited for the king's words to move them. King Thalvorn sat on his high seat, his long, dark cloak trailing across the polished floor. His eyes, sharp and cold, scanned the reports that had arrived from the medical divisions. Each report brought worse news than the last. The plague was spreading faster than they had predicted, and the cure that could save him and his people was beyond their reach. Only one species, far from Xyrath, possessed the knowledge and technology to halt the deadly disease: the humans. To Thalvorn, they were a primitive species, limited and reckless, unworthy of the vast knowledge they might possess. Yet now, desperation carved away his pride. His life, and perhaps the survival of his entire civilization, depended on these humans. He could not personally travel to their world. The risk was far too great. Their planet was full of unpredictability, of chaotic systems that might not respond to even the most carefully planned approach. If he were to survive, he would have to send someone else a living token of negotiation. Lyra, his daughter, stood quietly in the shadows. She had always been unseen, as if her presence mattered little to her father or the court. Small in frame, with pale skin that shimmered faintly under the throne room lights, she moved with gentle caution, eyes flicking nervously at the seated king. She had long learned to make herself invisible, to avoid the scorn and dismissive gestures that followed her wherever she went. Her father had never wanted her, had never seen any value in her existence. To him, she was a mistake, a fragile life that did not match his expectations of strength or cunning. Lyra, the king's voice, cut through the stillness like a blade. It was not an invitation but a summons, cold and commanding. She stepped forward, hands clasped lightly, heart hammering in her chest. "You are aware of the plague," Thalvorn began, his tone neutral but heavy with unspoken threat. "It spreads through my people with alarming speed. The treatment we require exists only among a species on a distant planet. They call themselves humans." Lyra nodded, though her mind reeled. Humans were a curiosity in Xyrathian records, usually described as fragile and primitive, with short lifespans and emotional volatility. Some scholars in the court had attempted contact, but nothing significant had been gained. "And you," the king continued, leaning forward slightly, eyes glinting, "will be the instrument of my survival. You will be sent to them." Clonli. Clonware. Lyra froze, confusion and fear battling for dominance inside her. "Me? Father?" she whispered. "You would send me?" Thalvorn's expression did not change. "You are expendable. You have no value here. But to them, you will be extraordinary. They will see you as a gift, a bridge between our species and theirs. Through you, they will be persuaded to save my life." Lyra's chest tightened. She had long felt the sting of being unwanted, but never had it been so blatant. To be sent away as nothing more than a tool, something to barter with, stung deeper than she could have imagined. Yet, beneath the fear, a small spark of curiosity ignited. To leave Xyrath, even under these circumstances, was something she had never dared dream. The universe beyond the palace walls had always seemed distant, a place she could only imagine from books and holograms. "You will depart immediately," the king said, rising from his throne. His tall frame cast a shadow over her, cold and imposing. "Preparations will be made. You will have what is necessary to survive the journey. Once there, do not forget your purpose. You are a gift. Nothing more." Lyra bowed her head. Words failed her, but her mind raced. She would go. She had no choice. Resistance was pointless. The humans were unknown and frightening, yet some part of her, a small, stubborn ember, thrilled at the possibility of discovery. Perhaps, just perhaps, she could find a place where she mattered. The palace staff moved quickly. Her quarters were transformed into a small chamber with supplies for travel, data about the humans, and devices designed to sustain her during the long journey through space. Lyra studied each item carefully, memorizing their function and imagining how she would use them. she felt a strange mix of anxiety and excitement. The weight of her father's words pressed on her, yet she could not deny a flicker of hope. On the day of her departure, the sky above Zyrath was painted in deep purples and blues, streaked with the light of distant stars. Lyra stood before the ship, a sleek vessel, shaped like the wing of a giant predator. The craft had been engineered for stealth and speed, capable of traveling immense distances without detection. She ran her hand along the cold metal, feeling the hum of energy beneath her fingers. The crew, composed of loyal Zyrathian soldiers, gave her curt instructions. They would accompany her only to the edge of the human territory, ensuring she arrived safely. Beyond that point, she would be alone, at the mercy of a species whose temperament and motives were unknown. The thought sent a shiver down her spine, but she squared her shoulders. Fear would not paralyze her. She had survived the disdain of her father and the indifference of her people. She could survive this. The countdown began, and the hum of engines rose to a crescendo. Lyra's heart pounded in rhythm with the vibration of the ship as it lifted off the ground, slicing through the atmosphere and into the void of space. Stars stretched into lines as the ship accelerated beyond conventional speeds. She pressed her hand to the transparent wall of her cabin, watching her home world shrink into a tiny jewel among the vast cosmos. Hours turned into days as the ship traveled. Lyra spent her time reviewing the data on humans, learning about their societies, technology, and weaknesses. She marveled at the complexity of their minds, the variety of their cultures, and the resilience they showed in the face of adversity. Unlike the Zyrathians, whose society prized strength and obedience above all else, humans relied on creativity, courage, and collaboration. These qualities, Lyra realized, were underestimated by many in her own world, including her father. As the ship approached Earth, the first sight of the planet brought awe and a strange sense of familiarity. Blue oceans and green continents stretched beneath her, teeming with life and movement. She felt a pang of longing not for home, but for understanding, for connection with beings who might see her not as a tool, but as a living creature with thoughts and feelings. When the ship finally entered Earth's atmosphere, Lyra was prepared for panic and hostility. Her father had warned her that humans were unpredictable, capable of both great kindness and great violence. Yet as she descended into the secure research facility where she would land, she noticed something remarkable. Humans had anticipated her arrival. They had built structures, devices, and protocols designed to receive her safely. They approached with caution, yes, but also with evident curiosity and intelligence. The hatch opened with a hiss, and a small team of humans stepped forward. Lyra studied them carefully. They were unlike the Zyrathians, smaller in stature, more delicate in appearance. Yet there was a spark in their eyes that spoke of resilience and determination. One of them, a woman with short dark hair and bright eyes, stepped forward and spoke in a clear, calm voice. "Welcome," she said. "We've been expecting you." Lyra's throat tightened. These humans did not see her as a mere object. They acknowledged her presence, treated her as a being capable of thought and feeling. She felt something she had never felt in her father's palace: recognition, and perhaps even respect. The team led her into the facility, showing her the instruments and laboratories where her knowledge would be crucial. They asked questions, listened to her answers, and adapted their technology to incorporate her insights. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt her mind matter. She was not just a gift or a tool. She was an active participant, a bridge between two worlds. That night, as she rested in the small quarters prepared for her, Lyra looked out the window at the Earth sky, bright with the lights of human civilization. She thought of her father, of his cold words, and of the path that had brought her here. Fear and sadness lingered, but so did determination. She would not fail. She could not. If she succeeded, she might save her father, perhaps even redeem herself in the eyes of her people. More importantly, she would prove something to herself: that even someone unwanted, dismissed, and overlooked, could carry the weight of worlds and stand strong. As the lights of Earth twinkled below, Lyra whispered a quiet promise to herself. She would survive. She would learn, and she would show both humans and Zyrathians that courage and brilliance were not determined by birthright or approval, but by the choices one made when faced with the impossible. And with that thought, she closed her eyes, ready for the journey that would change not just her life, but the fate of two species. Lyra awoke to the soft hum of the human facility, a sound unlike anything she had known on Zyrath. It was steady, mechanical, yet strangely comforting, like the pulse of a living being. She sat up and looked around her small quarters. Unlike the cold, grand halls of her father's palace, this space was warm, functional, and filled with devices she did not fully understand. Everything was designed to help her, to make her life possible on this strange planet. A gentle knock on the door startled her. A young human, perhaps not much older than herself, peeked in. His hair was messy, and his eyes bright with curiosity and intelligence. "Good morning," he said softly. "I'm Elliot. I'll be helping you today." Lyra studied him carefully. Humans were smaller than Zyrathians, weaker in appearance, but there was something in their eyes that spoke of focus, determination, and a willingness to face challenges head-on. She nodded politely. "I am Lyra," she replied. Her voice sounded small in the large room, but she noticed the way Elliot did not dismiss her. He seemed genuinely interested. "We'll start with a tour of the facility," Elliot said. "There's a lot for you to see, and the others are eager to meet you." Lyra followed him through long corridors filled with blinking lights, humming machines, and large screens displaying images she barely understood. Everything seemed alive with energy and motion. Yet humans moved with purpose, each step measured, each action deliberate. For someone from Zyrath, where efficiency often meant fear and control, this approach was new and fascinating. At the center of the facility, a group of humans waited. They were scientists and engineers, some with protective suits, others with tablets in hand. They looked at her not as an alien to be feared, but as a participant to be understood. Lyra, a woman with short, dark hair, said, stepping forward, "I'm Dr. Reeve. Welcome to our world. We've prepared a place for you to help us with a project, something very important." Lyra nodded, feeling a mixture of apprehension and curiosity. She had expected suspicion, perhaps even hostility, but there was none. These humans treated her as an ally, not a tool. She could feel a strange warmth, a recognition that she had rarely experienced in her father's court. Dr. Reeve guided her to a large table displaying images of her home planet, the plague affecting it, and the humans' preliminary research. Lyra studied the data carefully. She explained the nature of the disease, how it spread, and what types of treatments might work. She noted their skepticism when her words described conditions and biology unlike anything on Earth. Yet, she saw their determination. They asked questions, adjusted their models, and integrated her knowledge with their own. Hours passed quickly. Lyra found herself immersed in a world of collaboration. For the first time, she felt her mind truly mattered. Humans worked together differently than Zyrathians. Where her people relied on strict hierarchy and obedience, humans shared ideas freely, debated openly, and adapted quickly. Each human contribution, no matter how small, was valued. Lyra realized that this was a kind of strength she had never seen before. During a break, Elliot led her to a small observation window overlooking a laboratory filled with plants and microbial cultures. "We're experimenting with hybrid solutions," he said. "Combining Earth biology with knowledge from other worlds is tricky, but we're making progress." Lyra nodded thoughtfully. On Zyrath, experimentation often carried severe consequences for failure. Here, failure was a tool for learning, a step toward progress. She could see how this approach allowed humans to achieve remarkable results, despite their apparent fragility. Days turned into weeks. Lyra became a vital part of the team, contributing ideas and guiding experiments. She showed the humans techniques from Zyrathian science that they had never encountered. In turn, They introduced her to methods she had never imagined. Their cooperation created solutions neither species could achieve alone. Beyond science, Lyra observed the humans in everyday life. She saw their humor, their kindness, their resilience. Even in moments of stress, they found ways to support each other, to lift one another's spirits. She noticed small acts, a scientist sharing food, a technician offering a comforting word, a young assistant quietly fixing a machine for a colleague. These moments were foreign to her, yet profoundly moving. One evening, Lyra was in the laboratory when an alarm sounded. A simulation had gone wrong, releasing a harmless but volatile chemical. Panic swept through the humans, but Lyra remained calm. She analyzed the situation, directing them with precise instructions to contain the substance safely. Her knowledge and composure impressed the team. After the incident, Dr. Reeve approached her. "You have a gift," she said simply. "You see solutions that others can't. You think in ways that make the impossible possible." Lyra felt a warmth she had never known. She had been unwanted, dismissed, and underestimated all her life. Yet here, on this distant planet, her mind and her courage were recognized and valued. She realized that humans, far from being primitive, possessed a brilliance that complemented her own abilities. Together, they could do extraordinary things. The days were not without challenge. Lyra faced doubts and fears, moments when the weight of her father's expectations pressed heavily on her. She worried that if she failed, her father might die, and with him, the hope of her people. Yet, with each problem solved, with each collaboration, her confidence grew. She was no longer just a gift. She was a partner, a vital link in a chain that could save a life and change the course of two civilizations. One night, while working late, Lyra found herself gazing at the stars beyond the window. The Earth's sky was vast and full of possibilities. She thought of Xyrath, of her father, of the world she had left behind. She realized that the journey had changed her. She was stronger than she had known, and she had discovered the power of cooperation, courage, and compassion. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft voice. "Lyra, are you okay?" It was Elliot, still at the lab, looking concerned. "I am," she replied, a small smile forming. "I am learning more than I ever imagined. And I am grateful." He nodded. "The humans are grateful too. You've helped us see things we couldn't on our own. We're lucky to have you here." Quote. Lyra felt a surge of pride. She had always been overlooked, always been told she was weak or insignificant. Yet here, her presence made a difference. She realized that value was not determined by what others expected, but by the choices one made when faced with the impossible. Weeks later, a breakthrough occurred. Combining human technology with Lyra's knowledge of Xyrathian biology, the team developed a prototype treatment. It was untested, risky, but it had the potential to save her father's life. Excitement and tension filled the laboratory as the humans prepared simulations and calculations. Lyra guided them with precision, correcting minor errors, offering insights, and encouraging bold approaches. For the first time, Lyra felt a sense of true purpose. She had been sent away as a gift, an expendable token in her father's desperate gamble. But she had become more than that. She was a bridge, a catalyst, and a symbol of what could be achieved when humans and aliens worked together. She also began to see the potential for change back on Xyrath. Perhaps, one day, her people could learn from humans learning to value creativity, empathy, and collaboration. Perhaps the world that had rejected her could grow stronger. Not through fear and obedience, but through cooperation and understanding. That night, as she rested, Lyra felt a quiet determination. The path ahead was uncertain. The humans had their own challenges. The treatment was risky, and the fate of Xyrath hung in the balance. Yet, she no longer feared failure. She had seen the power of human ingenuity, the strength of collaboration, and the resilience of a species often underestimated. She had seen her own strength as well, and she knew, deep within her heart, that she would not fail. The stars outside the window twinkled, indifferent to the struggles below, yet full of possibilities. Lyra gazed at them, feeling a connection she had never experienced before. For the first time, she understood that being unwanted did not mean being powerless. Strength came from courage, knowledge, and the willingness to act when it mattered most. In the quiet of the laboratory, surrounded by humans who had come to respect and trust her, Lyra allowed herself a small, hopeful smile. She had crossed a vast distance, left behind everything familiar, and discovered something far greater than she had imagined. She had discovered the potential of life, the brilliance of humanity, and her own remarkable capacity to change the world. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, more difficult decisions, and the weight of her father's life on her shoulders. But tonight, she rested knowing that she had made a difference, and in that knowledge, she found strength, hope, and the first true taste of freedom. Lyra had arrived on Earth as a gift, yet she would remain not a gift, but a force, a partner, and a bridge between worlds. And she would ensure that humans, with their ingenuity and courage, would play a role in saving a life that mattered far more than anyone could have predicted. The human laboratory buzzed with activity, each sound a note in the symphony of collaboration. Lyra moved among the humans, guiding, advising, and learning in equal measure. The treatment they were developing was risky, combining alien biology with human technology in ways neither species had attempted before, but the potential reward was immense. Her father's life depended on it, and she felt a surge of responsibility that weighed on her like gravity. Dr. Reeve stood at a console, her brow furrowed in concentration. "We need to stabilize the compound before we can even simulate the next step," she said. "There's too much instability in the alien proteins when mixed with human enzymes." Lyra nodded, studying the holographic displays. She traced the molecular structures with her fingers, her mind moving faster than the technology around her. "If you isolate the protein sequences in smaller clusters first, then recombine them after stabilization, the reaction will be safer. It's what we do on Xyrath when handling volatile biological matter." The humans exchanged glances, some skeptical, some intrigued. "We've never thought of it that way," one of the engineers admitted. "But it makes sense. Let's try it." Hours passed as the team reconfigured equipment, adjusted measurements, and ran simulations. Lyra's presence had become indispensable. She noticed subtle details the humans missed, offered solutions that combined logic with creativity, and encouraged them when the pressure grew intense. For the first time, she felt like she belonged somewhere, like her knowledge and abilities were truly valued. During a short break, Lyra stepped outside the laboratory, her gaze drifting toward the Earth sky. The planet stretched endlessly beneath her, full of life and movement. She thought of her father, alone on Xyrath, depending on her to succeed. She could feel the weight of expectation pressing on her, but instead of fear, it fueled her determination. Failure was not an option, not for her father, not for her people, and not for the humans who had come to trust her. Elliot joined her, carrying a small cup of water. "You're thinking too hard," he said with a teasing smile. "You need a break, even if it's just a few minutes." Lyra shook her head. "I cannot stop now. Every minute counts. If we fail, it could mean the end of my father's life." Elliot frowned, understanding her burden but wishing she would take a moment for herself. "I get it," he said, "but even the strongest need rest. You're not just a tool, you're a person. Don't forget that." Lyra considered his words, a small smile forming. Humans had a way of looking at life that was different from Xyrathians. They valued each other, even when circumstances were dire. It was a strength she admired, and one she had begun to internalize. Back in the lab, the team faced their first major setback. The treatment, when tested in simulation, caused unexpected side effects. Energy spikes threatened to destabilize the mixture, risking failure and potential contamination. Panic rippled through the humans, but Lyra remained calm. She quickly analyzed the situation, her mind racing to find a solution. Focus on the stabilizing clusters, she instructed firmly. Adjust the timing of the enzymatic reactions. You're rushing the recombination. And that's causing the instability. The humans followed her instructions, their hands moving with precision, guided by her calm authority. Slowly, the simulations began to stabilize, the energy spikes reducing to safe levels. A collective sigh of relief filled the lab. Dr. Reeve placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder. "You did it. You saved the simulation," she said, eyes filled with admiration. "Without you, we would have lost hours, maybe days, of progress." Lyra felt a rush of satisfaction. For the first time in her life, she had achieved something not because of obligation or expectation, but because of her own skill, intelligence, and courage. She had found a place where she was needed, respected, and capable of making a difference. As days turned into weeks, the bond between Lyra and the humans grew stronger. They began to rely on her insight, not only for technical matters, but also for guidance in planning and decision-making. She shared stories of Zyrathian culture, their approaches to problem-solving, and their biological knowledge, enriching the humans' understanding and broadening their perspective. Lyra, in turn, learned from the humans. She observed their resilience, their creativity under pressure, and their capacity for empathy. They worked tirelessly, often sacrificing sleep and comfort to pursue the shared goal of saving her father. Their determination and moral courage impressed her deeply. They were, in her eyes, a species capable of extraordinary achievements, far beyond what her father had ever imagined. One afternoon, as Lyra reviewed the latest test results, an urgent alert sounded. A critical stage of the treatment had failed unexpectedly, threatening to destroy weeks of progress. The laboratory erupted into controlled chaos, humans rushing to correct the error, their faces tense with concentration. Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady and commanding. "Stop all automated recombinations immediately. Reassess the protein clusters. The instability is not in the human enzymes, it is the sequence alignment. Adjust the clusters manually. Then recombine slowly. Follow my instructions exactly." The humans paused, then executed her directions with precision. Slowly, the system stabilized. The energy spikes decreased. The simulation returned to normal, and relief washed over the team. They looked at Lyra with awe, realizing that her guidance had saved not only the experiment but potentially their confidence and momentum. "You're incredible," Dr. Reeve said softly, her voice filled with genuine respect. "You're not just helping us. You're leading us in ways we couldn't have anticipated." Lyra's heart swelled with pride. She had been unwanted, dismissed, and underestimated all her life. Here, on Earth, she was making a real difference. The humans had shown her that true strength came not from power or fear, but from courage, intelligence, and the willingness to act when it mattered most. That evening, as the facility quieted, Lyra reflected on the journey so far. She had crossed the galaxy as a pawn, a gift sent by a father who did not care for her. Yet, in this strange human world, she had discovered her own potential. She had learned the value of collaboration, the brilliance of human ingenuity, and the strength that comes from empathy and trust. Elliot approached her once more, carrying a small tray of food. "You need to eat," he said gently. "You've been working non-stop. Even the strongest need sustenance." Lyra smiled faintly. "Thank you, Elliot. I will." She took the tray and began to eat, savoring the moment of calm. She realized that these small gestures, this human kindness, were as important as any scientific breakthrough. They were reminders that even in the face of immense pressure, life could be valued, nurtured, and protected. Days later, the team achieved a breakthrough. By carefully combining human technology with Lyra's alien knowledge, they developed a stable prototype of the treatment. It was a fragile success, but it was enough to offer hope. The moment was filled with excitement, relief, and cautious optimism. Dr. Reeve gathered the team. "This is just the beginning," she said, her voice firm. Lyra has shown us the way, but we must now prepare for the real challenge applying this treatment in the field, where stakes are far higher. Lyra nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. Her father's life hung in the balance, and she would not let fear or uncertainty stop her. She had grown stronger, more confident, and more determined with each passing day. She had learned the human way of combining knowledge, courage, and empathy to achieve the impossible. That night, as she looked out at the Earth sky once more, Lyra felt a sense of purpose she had never known. She had been sent as a gift, an unwanted daughter used as a bargaining tool, but she had become something far greater. She was a partner, a guide, and a bridge between worlds. The humans had taught her that even those considered weak or insignificant could achieve extraordinary things when given trust, respect, and opportunity. Lyra whispered a quiet promise to herself. She would succeed. She would save her father, not because she was commanded to, but because she could. She would honor the trust and collaboration of the humans who had become her allies, and she would prove that even someone who was unwanted could shape the future of two species. The laboratory fell silent, filled only with the soft hum of machinery and the quiet determination of those working toward a common goal. Lyra stood among them, her mind racing with ideas, calculations, and strategies. She had discovered strength she had never known, and she was ready to face the challenges ahead. Tomorrow would bring new tests, new obstacles, and new moments of uncertainty. But Lyra was no longer the fragile, dismissed daughter of King Thalvorn. She was a force to be reckoned with, a symbol of what could be accomplished when humans and aliens worked together, and she would ensure that their combined knowledge and courage would succeed where fear and isolation had failed. The stars above Earth twinkled, silent witnesses to the growing bond between species, to the courage of a young alien girl, and to the ingenuity of humans who had chosen to rise to a challenge far beyond their world. In that quiet moment, Lyra knew one truth. Together, they could face the impossible and perhaps even change the fate of the galaxy. The spacecraft carrying the prototype treatment hurtled through space, cutting across the darkness with silent precision. Lyra sat in the command chair, her hands steady on the controls, her mind sharp and alert. The treatment she had helped develop with the humans was fragile, untested in real conditions, and her father's life depended on it. Every decision, every maneuver mattered. She thought of King Thalvorn, of his cold instructions and dismissive words. He had sent her as a gift, as an expendable pawn in his desperate gamble. Yet now, she carried the power to save him, to prove that even someone unwanted could make a difference. The thought gave her strength. Failure was no longer an option. Elliot sat beside her, monitoring the instruments. "We're approaching Xyrath," he said. "The environment will be challenging. The planet's atmosphere is unstable, and the energy fields around the capital are strong. We'll need to be precise." Lyra nodded. "I understand. Prepare the stabilizers and align the treatment modules. Any mistake could destroy the solution before it even reaches him." The humans had placed their trust in her, and she would not let them down. The journey had taught her more than science. It had taught her courage, resilience, and the power of collaboration. She felt the weight of responsibility, but it no longer felt like a burden. It was a challenge she was ready to face. As the ship entered Xyrath's orbit, alarms began to blare. Energy fields designed to protect the planet pulsed unpredictably, threatening to disrupt the delicate treatment modules. Lyra's heart raced, but her mind stayed calm. She adjusted the shields, rerouted power, and synchronized the treatment stabilizers with the ship's core systems. Slowly, the alarms ceased, the modules stabilized, and the ship glided safely toward the surface. The capital of Xyrath was as Lyra remembered it: grand, cold, and imposing. Towers of black metal rose into the sky, and the streets below were eerily quiet. Her father's palace loomed ahead, a symbol of power and fear, yet it now held the possibility of life and redemption. She landed the ship in the palace courtyard, careful to avoid the security systems that had once been her prison. The human team followed closely, their presence a reminder of the strength that came from cooperation. Together, They carried the treatment to the throne room, where King Thalvorn lay in a state of fragile unconsciousness. The king's advisors watched warily as Lyra and the humans entered. Their eyes were filled with suspicion and fear, yet none dared interfere. Lyra's calm confidence and the presence of the humans commanded respect. She approached her father, placing the treatment device near him and carefully activating the protocol. The treatment began to flow through him, a delicate balance of alien biology and human technology. Monitors displayed vital signs, energy levels, and cellular responses. For hours, Lyra and the humans worked tirelessly, adjusting, monitoring, and guiding the process. The room was tense, every moment heavy with the potential for success or disaster. Lyra's thoughts drifted to the humans who had helped her. They had trusted her, respected her knowledge, and worked alongside her as equals. Their courage, intelligence, and empathy had made this moment possible. She realized that her father's life and the future of Zyrath were now linked to the strength of a species he had once dismissed. As the final stage of the treatment approached, King Thalvorn's vital signs began to stabilize. The color returned to his skin, his breathing grew steady, and the monitors indicated recovery. The humans and Lyra exchanged relieved glances. They had succeeded, not through force, but through knowledge, cooperation, and courage. King Thalvorn's eyes fluttered open. He looked around, confusion and recognition battling within him. His gaze fell on Lyra, and for the first time, he truly saw her. She was no longer the fragile, unwanted daughter he had dismissed. She was strong, intelligent, and courageous. She had not only saved his life but had orchestrated a collaboration that proved the brilliance of humans. Lyra. His voice was weak, but it carried weight. You saved me?" Lyra nodded, her expression calm yet firm. "I did, Father. But I did not do it alone. Humans helped me. Their courage, their knowledge, and their determination made this possible." The king's eyes widened. He had underestimated humanity, just as he had underestimated his own daughter. For the first time, he felt humility. He saw that true strength was not measured by dominance, control, or fear, but by intelligence, collaboration, and empathy. Dr. Reeve stepped forward. "Your Majesty, we have demonstrated that humans and Zyrathians can work together to achieve extraordinary results. This is just the beginning." Thalvorn's gaze shifted between Lyra and the humans, a mix of awe, disbelief, and realization. He had been saved not by power or loyalty, but by ingenuity, courage, and trust. And he had been blind to the potential in both his daughter and the humans. Lyra took a deep breath. "I came here as a gift, Father," she said softly, "but I have proven that being unwanted does not mean being powerless. We all have the ability to change the world if we are given trust and opportunity." The king remained silent for a long moment, his mind processing the weight of her words. Then, slowly, he nodded. "You are extraordinary, Lyra. I was blind. I was wrong. You have saved me, saved our people, and taught me the value of a species I dismissed. I owe you more than I can express." Lyra felt a sense of relief, but also quiet pride. She had never sought her father's approval. Yet now she had earned it not through obedience, but through courage, intelligence, and compassion. She had grown stronger, wiser, and more confident. She had discovered her own value and the brilliance of humans who had stood beside her. The humans were invited to stay in the palace, and for the first time, they were treated as equals. Their presence was a testament to what could be achieved through cooperation and trust. They shared their knowledge, guided the Zyrathian scientists, and helped implement new strategies to prevent future crises. The king, once rigid and proud, began to learn from them. Realizing that humility and collaboration were as valuable as power and control, Lyra walked through the palace halls, observing the changes. Guards no longer treated her with indifference or disdain. Advisors listened to her suggestions. The humans moved freely, respected for their contributions and insight. She realized that her journey had transformed not only herself but her world as well. Days passed, and the plague was brought under control. The humans and Lyra had implemented strategies that combined the strengths of both species, creating a solution that was effective, sustainable, and unprecedented. Xyrath's people began to recover, and hope returned to the planet for the first time in months. Lyra spent a quiet moment in the throne room, looking at her father. He was still recovering, but his gaze held something new: respect, understanding, and humility. She realized that the greatest gift she had given him was not just life, but perspective. He had learned that strength could take many forms, and that brilliance was not limited to Xyrathians alone. Elliot approached her, his expression warm. "You've changed everything," he said. "Your courage, your knowledge, your determination. You've shown both species what's possible." Lyra smiled. "I only did what needed to be done, but I could not have done it alone. Humans have shown me that even those considered weak or insignificant can achieve great things when they are trusted and respected." "Doctor," Reeve nodded in agreement. "That's the lesson here. Collaboration, courage, and empathy, those are the qualities that create true progress. And you, Lyra, embody all of them." Lyra looked at the humans, at the scientists, engineers, and assistants who had worked tirelessly beside her. She felt a deep sense of connection. A bond forged not by blood or obligation, but by shared purpose and mutual respect. They had faced impossible odds together, and they had succeeded. Her father, now fully conscious and recovering, called her forward. "Lyra, you have done what I could not. You have shown me the value of humanity, the strength and courage, and the brilliance of collaboration. I was wrong to dismiss you, wrong to send you as a gift. But I am grateful. You have not only saved my life but have changed the future of our people." Lyra bowed slightly, a mixture of pride and humility in her posture. "Thank you, Father. But remember, this was not just my doing. Humans helped, guided, and collaborated. They are a remarkable species. You must never underestimate them again." Thalvorn nodded, his eyes thoughtful. "I will not. I have learned my lesson. Strength is not only in power but in understanding, courage, and collaboration. And you, Lyra, have taught me that lesson better than any words or decrees ever could." The humans were celebrated, not as guests, but as allies and equals. Xyrathian scientists and citizens began to learn from their approach, embracing collaboration, empathy, and innovation in ways that had been previously unthinkable. Lyra watched as the world around her began to change, slowly, but with promise. She realized that her journey had accomplished far more than saving one life. She had bridged worlds, taught lessons of humility and respect, and shown that brilliance was not defined by birthright or approval, but by courage, intelligence, and the willingness to act when it mattered most. As she looked out at the stars from the palace balcony, she felt a sense of peace and accomplishment. The humans had proven themselves. Her father had learned humility, and she had discovered her own strength. Being unwanted had led her to a path of incredible discovery and growth. She had become more than a gift. She had become a force, a bridge, and a symbol of what could be achieved when courage, knowledge, and empathy were combined. Lyra whispered to herself, a quiet promise for the future. "I will continue to learn, to grow, and to guide. And I will never forget the power of trust, collaboration, and human ingenuity." The stars above shone bright, as if acknowledging her journey, her courage, and the bond between humans and Xyrathians that would forever change the course of both worlds. And for the first time, Lyra felt truly at home, strong, valued, and ready for whatever challenges the future might bring.